Moscow, some uninhabitable place which will be not adequately developed, the infrastructure will not be good, and so on and so forth. So it's not about Khrushchevka. I was living in Bishkek for 2 years in a Khrushchevka. I survived. I never had to open the window because the wind was always blowing, winter and summer. But there are so many things that Russia should be doing. Everything is a matter of urgency and is actually losing, and that's the real concern for me is not the Russian leadership. I'm not worried how Medvedev will resign in Toscana, in his lovely place that you can see on the Navalny.com website. But my real worry is about 140 million other Russians who are going to suffer the consequences of mistaken strategic decisions of the current leadership.
I think that for you it could be also interesting the idea of Pan-Slavism. So it was idea very popular in the 19th and first half of the 20th century. The clue of this idea was to unite the Slavic nations under the big brother's wings, under the Russians. This idea was very popular among the Czechs. As you know, in the 19th century, the present Czech Republic was a part of the Austro-Hungary, and it was also, and this is also an example of how the Russian can influence the different nations and can exploit the differences and conflicts inside the different countries. Finally, this idea of Pan-Slavism lost the popularity among the Czechs after 1968, the Warsaw Pact intervention. However, this is, I think it could be also interesting a subject for the study for you.
Monika Postak, Minister of the Interior. I have a question concerning the active measures of the Russian Federation. I would like you to wander for a moment and think about the immigration crisis. This could be one of the active measures orchestrated by the Russian Federation, and it would end up with the civil war, for instance, in Sweden and in France. What would be the answer for the Eastern European in that kind of event? Thank you.
Just for clarity, this was a question about the Syrian refugee crisis and whether this was an active measure that could lead to war?
Leave the Syrians alone. It's about the immigration crisis as a whole and problems with the civil aspects of it in that particular countries, especially Sweden and France.
Okay, I didn't quite catch all of it, but I'll try to answer what I think I understood, and will again be grateful for comments from the others. I think there is reason to think that that Russia did intentionally try to aggravate the refugee and immigration crisis through its conduct of military operations in Syria. Apparently the deliberate targeting of hospitals, schools, civilian population centers, and so forth as a way of fanning the flow of refugees into Europe just at the time that it was already reaching kind of a political sensitivity in Germany and other countries. So it's my best judgment based on open reporting that was a deliberate part of the Russian strategy. Whether this could lead to a further escalation of conflict, at least in Germany right now where we're living, and Garmisch-Partenkirchen itself, a town of about 25,000 people, did get maybe 800 to 1,000 refugees settled there. The numbers are going down a bit now. Germany, I think, feels that at least for the medium term, the refugee crisis is under control, that there's a deal with Turkey to stop the flow through the Western Balkans route. Perhaps the numbers of people who were going to leave Syria in any case, most of them probably already have. So there's at least a pause in the immigration crisis. But I think you're right that over the long term, There's the prospect of more immigration in general, not just from conflict zones like Syria, but from poorer regions neighboring Europe in Africa and elsewhere, and that this is a long-term conflict, or at least a long-term challenge for Europe and the European Union, and certainly an issue of tension and political and diplomatic conflict inside the European Union, especially between countries like Germany and the Visegrad states. Others like to join.
Maybe, yeah, so as Matt said, if you bomb hospitals, bakeries and schools, kindergartens, the civil population will move. And that certainly seems to be the case with regards to Aleppo and 70,000 migrants leaving very quickly. And using kinetic force, military force, coercive force means you can quickly, if you want to, generate large numbers of migrants at particular times. Kind of when you use the phrase active measures, I'm thinking more of political assassination. Litvinenko, for example, using radium and tea in 2006, or ex-Duma member in Kiev earlier this year, assassinated on the streets, or Nemtsov, 27th of February 2015, in central Moscow. I can kind of consider that more active measures. But the weaponization of migrants and refugees, I think, to the extent that Russia does it, I mean, conflicts themselves generate migrants, which Russia isn't necessarily responsible for, but to the extent that Russia does weaponize migrants, the cases are, I think, using bicycles to cross the Finnish border to send a message to Finland. There's allegations that the so-called Orthodox oligarch Konstantin Malofeev, who was involved in the financing of the Montenegrin coup, 16th of October last year, was also involved in a plan to mass migrants on the Macedonian border and send them across into Macedonia. So the use of migrants, I think, and weaponizing them, from the Russian perspective, demonstrates the non-viability of regional security systems, of the EU, of NATO. Essentially the message is, these institutions are failing, they can't cope with this. But also you have internally displaced people from conflicts in Georgia and Ukraine, stresses, Kiev and Tbilisi having to cope with that. It's an additional burden and difficulty. So also looking at IDPs as internally displaced people is, I think, part of the case. Yeah, I agree with Matt. In Germany, at least, the feeling is we can cope. Germany's looking at 7 million labor supply shortfall over the next 10 years. And the question really now is, can Germany integrate the number of migrants that it has? And you're shaking your head. My wife, for example, who's German, had voluntary work with migrants. And there was a Nigerian lady who spoke 2 or 3 local languages and English, but had no primary education and hadn't learned to read or write. So first task was to teach to read and write, and then to learn German as part of the integration process. So for some of the migrants, it's a very long process, a very uncertain process whether they'll be able to. But their children will, because their children will go through German schooling system and learn German and be in a much better position to integrate, I think. Thank you.
Very briefly, and this is going to be the 3 minutes when I become a Hungarian nationalist. So this is. I hope that you will cope with it. I think we will have to go back to the starting point. The starting point is that in the last 70 years, ever since World War II, we always saw 2 things. We saw a small number of people who were eligible to refugee status, the Marlene Dietrichs and the Albert Einsteins. Their integration is not particularly difficult. And we always had economic migrants on masses, and we always picked out the ones that we could do something. The integration, the cultural integration of migrants in Europe is generally not fully successful. Whether because we did not do enough, or for other reason, I don't know. Indians and the Pakistanis are beating up each other in Bradford. The Vietnamese are burning buildings, or the fascists building the Vietnamese buildings in Rostock in 1991, and so on and so forth. Plenty of examples. We have to understand that we are coping with a situation which is unprecedented in the last 70 years. That actually millions of people show up on our borders who would be eligible, at least temporarily, for refugee status. Because what happened to Aleppo and a number of other things. So people are not escaping in order to make 200 euros more. They are escaping because they are threatened in their existence, in physical existence. And then, of course, there is a variation how we react to this. Whether we give further encouragement, wir schaffen das, says the Bundeskanzlerin. Or we give some more mixed messages that we are going to take you up temporarily, but you are not going to be welcome. The Willkommenskultur will be missing. You are going to be here, and eventually, when the conflict from which you escaped will come to an end, we will ask you politely to return to your country. And in this situation comes in some countries which are building fences, which is not nice, who are confining people. That's not nice. This goes against humanity. The entire thing that we are not letting people in is not only violating EU rules, it's violating universal international law. It's violating the 1951 Geneva Convention and its 1967 additional protocol. So we are disrespecting our own humanity. At the same time, I sometimes understand that this kind of migratory pressure should be limited in one way or the other. And where I am critical of the Hungarian government is not necessarily that it is stopping migration. It's the way it is stopping and the way it is treating people. So that's where I would make a difference. That's why I call myself a Hungarian nationalist occasionally. So, and at the same time, you know, some countries need labor, but the labor force which is showing up is not necessarily the labor force it needs. Not to mention, inside the European Union, there is a lot of labor movement as well. 2 of my 3 children are living in Germany and Austria, respectively. One studies, the other works, and so on and so forth. So there is a structural difference, and that's where I think our agreement is not full with Graeme, that the difficulty with the integration is very much an issue. And whether Germany will be able to integrate 1.3 million people, I am very, very doubtful. At the same time, if you just look at the election program, the CDU and CSU, and they are certainly going to govern that country after September 24 as well, they are saying, they just published it last week's Monday, I think, that they want to achieve a zero unemployment policy. Which is not zero unemployment, because there will be people who are looking for jobs. But basically they want to lastingly have unemployment below 3%. And 1.3 million people on the territory of the Federal Republic is massively interfering with this. So I think we will have to understand that we are facing an unprecedented problem, and we may need a combination of unprecedented solutions. And I agree with those EU leaders that are critical about the Visegrad states government. At the same time, I think that the offer what the EU is coming up is not a good enough offer.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ran out of time a while ago. I am reliably informed that there is coffee and tea in the lobby, and I am further reliably informed that the staff has not laced those beverages with polonium or anything else, and that it's relatively safe to drink. So I would like to invite you all to go out and have something to drink, and if you're interested, come back in 25 minutes for the next panel with 3 of our speakers and some people from the George C. Marshall Center who will pack the audience and continue what so far has been really a remarkable discussion, very professional, very precise, very complicated. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.